Hey, everybody, and welcome to this episode 220 of the Thoughtium Navigating Now virtual roundtable series. I am Anthony Ewing, CEO, co-founder here at Thoughtium. We go live every Thursday afternoon at 3 p.m. Central with leaders and leadership topics that matter most. And we've got a great leader today. Before we introduce our topic of discussion and our leader at the table, I want to thank everybody who is a part of our extended Navigating Now community, particularly those on LinkedIn that stop by our LinkedIn feed. You know, we get at least a couple thousand impressions every week, and we are so fortunate to be able to offer these thoughts, these insights, these best practices to you all. So whether you're just stopping by for a couple of moments, or maybe you're tuning in after we go live, we want to thank you. We do not take for granted this small but mighty community that we are building week over week, and 220 episodes strong. Quite a milestone for us. So we just want to thank you all for joining. All right, today's topic is all about how we can find motivation, how we can unlock new dimensions of our career through values. And we've got a leader today that I'm really excited to talk to. Somebody who's been in the learning and development space, the people space, the leadership development space for many years, who has led in front of organization and has also really been adding value in the marketplace as a solo practitioner. So again, as I always say, when you mix this combination of entrepreneurship and corporate experience, you really get some phenomenal leaders. And today we have Joel Dietz. He is the founder and executive coach at Orange Door Coaching. And Joel is going to be joining us from Houston, and we'll bring him in. Joel, welcome to the table.
Thanks so much. Glad to be here.
Yeah. So Joel, before we get into kind of the topic today, which is all about leveraging values in the way that we coach and motivate others, I want to learn a little bit more about you. So here's an interesting kind of opening question that we like to ask our leaders as they step into the conversation. What's a memory that you have as kind of a child, maybe growing up, that you can call back to, that you can think about, that where you say, that's maybe the earliest memory of me when I look at and I say, oh, that's exactly why I'm doing what I'm doing today? What were you doing as a child or when you were growing up that says, I should be a coach today?
It's probably not childhood, although, my parents struggled a lot with the jobs they had, and I don't think they ever really loved their careers. So I think, like, as a reaction to, the possibility of having a job or having a career that you really get a lot of gratification from, is probably something I saw later as a reaction to that. But I would say probably in my 20s, but like personally, I had a lot of really weird and meandering jobs in my 20s that were not really part of a typical career track, and didn't really find myself until I was like around 29.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think back to the way that I maybe experienced my parents, both as professionals. My mother, a career teacher, and my dad in the business world. And we probably only got shades of it. There was a lot going on probably behind the scenes in terms of the way they were navigating their career. Sometimes I think back and I'm like, I do not know how they did it. And sometimes now I think back and I say, gosh, I learned from that. I learned from witnessing how they either struggled or they thrived to balance kind of career and family. So it's great that you were influenced by your folks. Today you are a career coach. You're an executive coach as well too, and you've got a lot of experience out front in leadership development, learning and development. What's maybe the most exciting part of what you get to do every day now as you are, out kind of doing your own thing as part of Orange Door?
Yeah, it's like watching people discover themselves. Like,
Yeah.
having someone come to the coaching conversation, or whether it's a leadership development workshop, bringing a particular challenge or a particular problem that they struggle with, whether it's a manager at work or whether it's someone who's trying to figure out what they want to do next. With Orange Door, I speak with a lot of people who are just burnt out or tired of what they do. They ended up in the job they have or the career they have because of maybe like family pressure, or it's what they majored in and it's just what happened. And here it is years later, and they're exasperated by the choice they made or worn out from it.
Yeah. And what's one of the first things that you do when you have a leader that comes to you and is just completely burned out?
Yeah, it's like it's really what this session is titled, discovering career through values. Because at the
Yeah.
end of the day, um, while there's a lot of people who have jobs and it isn't that important that a job aligns with their values, for most of us, it actually does. And really working through to identify those values, get them laid out. You ask the average person, what are your top 5 values? You might get 2
Yeah.
out of someone, but most people are, I don't know. So it takes time. It's a process.
Yeah, I totally agree. One of the most powerful kind of activities that we bring to our coaching engagements, and whether that's individual or even group coaching, is a values exercise that challenges people in a fairly short period of time to go from 100 values down to their top 3. And it's so interesting to see folks go through that process where, to go from 100 down to 10 tends to be like a pretty swift, like kind of, efficient process. But then when folks have to get down from 10 to 5 and 5 to 3, it really does challenge them to prioritize, like, what is most important in my life. And, do you find then, if somebody is going through this exercise, they've come in, they're totally burned out, maybe they're really confused, or they're just in a complete kind of like static moment in their career. What happens when you ask them to explore their values? What typically happens when somebody, goes into this work?
Yeah. So rather than a reductive kind of process like you described, and I do use values cards as an exercise if somebody needs it, but I really like to work with exercises that get people to generate those values kind of just from memories,
Mm,
from experiences. Think about things that you enjoyed doing, accomplishments that you had when you were growing up, things that you were most proud of, and why were you most proud of it? Because a lot of that, a lot of those stories from your past, the values surface within those stories. So
yeah.
while this reductive process from a deck can be really helpful if people are just really stuck, I find that the commitment to the values and the accuracy of what they identify really goes up when people have to generate it from scratch.
Yeah. And so as they do that, and again, I want to go back to, let's call them Sam. Sam's come in, they are, just completely exhausted, burned out. They're at a real inflection point. Maybe they've been with an organization for, 5-7 years, and they just feel like there's something next. We, take them through exploring their values. They're starting to talk about things that intrinsically motivate them, things that, really inspire them both in and outside of work. What's next, right? Like, we get them in that space, and then how do we leverage this focus on values to help enact behavior change, or to take a leap, or to shift, if you will?
Yeah. So it's really a process taking those values and starting to construct scenarios.
Yeah.
First, let's say somebody who has worked in marketing for their career and they've worked in an agency. If they're burnt out from from their marketing agency work, is it really marketing, or is it really just the agency setting? So, okay, if you like writing, if you like building stories that sell, if you like telling things visually, all marketing competencies. If you look at those types of competencies and you're like, no, I really do want to spend my day doing that. It's just the agency grind that just really killed me.
Yeah.
Then that's a different direction than coming to some conclusion that your values are so different altogether from the things that you're doing now, and you
Mm.
want to pivot. So taking those values and kind of painting pictures with them. Okay,
Yeah.
animal welfare is so important to me. Okay, if that's one of your values, how can you use that as a launch pad? How could you combine animal welfare with marketing?
Yeah.
What might that look like?
Yeah, I love that. The other I love the idea of like kind of painting the picture, real world scenarios, being able to put a couple scenarios on the table and say like, would you choose, going this route, or would you choose going this route based on your values? We also encourage our coachees to leverage their values as a discussion point when they are stepping into a new team, meeting a new manager, or having some of those like kind of career discussions. You'd be surprised when you're able to clearly articulate your top 2 or 3 values to a new manager, or even a manager in an ongoing career discussion, some of the unlocks that occur. Right. So for me, for example, my number one value is growth, probably times 10, like an exponent of 10. But if I'm not able to clearly articulate that and communicate that in any relationship for that matter, it's hard to kind of parse that out just based on being around me or having, light conversations. Sometimes we need to be explicit about that. And so, we encourage, our coachees and our clients as they go through, these values exercises, or they do more exploration, to also be comfortable bringing their values forward in growth discussions or career discussions, because it can be a wonderful starting point for, what we would consider some of those like unlock career discussions or personal growth discussions.
For sure. Yeah, like for me, one of my biggest values is like relationships. So
Yeah.
it's not important to me to be in the C-suite. That's not something I aspire to. The daily duties of that kind of a role don't call to me. I can't see myself ever wanting to play at an entrepreneurial level like Thoughtium. That's the big leagues. You've got
I don't know.
You've got a whole stable of folks working with you. But I find so much gratification from just the relationships with the people on my team, my teammates, my clients, that one-on-one kind of more honest. Yeah.
Totally agree. I also relate a little bit, as much as, I've gotten so much gratification, being a part of a leadership team here at Thoughtium. I always say that like the best job is being the number 2, because you kind of get to run alongside the leader and kind of like whisper in their ear, go left instead of go right. And you don't necessarily have the heaviness of kind of like the day-to-day accountability.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, whether you're running an organization, you're a solo entrepreneur, or you're a part of a large team, we all have the opportunity to be leaders. And so we've all got to have some of these discussions, and we've all have the ability to bring other people into things like, what are your values, and how might they impact the way that we work together? Because I think values is a great platform for self-exploration, but as I mentioned before, it can also be a wonderful conduit to driving deeper connection and engagement with others, which I think is super exciting. I want to, exploring values has been a real passion of ours, and it sounds like it is for you. And we could talk for days about that. I think I want to leave that topic here and maybe come back to it. I want to touch a little bit on just your career path. You have been converging on, this coaching career and really, helping folks out with, executive and transformational coaching. Tell us about what that journey's been like for you, and maybe not necessarily the resume version, but more so like, what's that experience been like for you stepping into, your true embodiment of being a coach, and a coach that's authentic to you.
Yeah. So for me, most of my experience in leadership development has been facilitating, which
Yeah.
is not as a trainer comes to the conversation with answers. A facilitator comes to the conversation really asking the right questions to prompt the group, to prompt the leaders that are participating in whatever that interaction is, to generate their own awareness, to generate their own aha moments. And I think really doing that for so many years as part of leadership development, the transition from that to coaching was really kind of a natural transition.
Yeah.
But I also learned in going through coach certification, ICF coaching certification, and studying coaching in a graduate level environment, coaching is a little bit different than I originally thought it would be.
Totally. I want to touch on that in a moment. One of the things you and I both recently over the last few years have been through the ICF certification process, or going through it. I completed my coaching certification just a couple of months ago, and am looking to complete my ICF certification here soon. And I'll tell you, heading into the program, I thought I had a really good understanding of the difference between particularly coaching, consulting, and facilitating. I thought I had a decent idea. But as I stepped into the program and got closer to more classical training, the nuances of coaching and how vastly different that is from consulting or even managing people. And my biggest surprise, and I'll ask you what yours was. My biggest surprise was that so many of the coaching conversations are all truly about enabling your coachee to arrive at their own answer. And we do that through literally asking questions. So like, I'll never forget one of my first kind of like mock coaching sessions that I had with one of our instructors as part of the program. I was the coachee, and she was the coach, and I couldn't believe the fact that the entire conversation was essentially her asking questions, and how skilled she was at doing that. So for those folks out there that are interested, maybe you are a career people leader, you've had some experience, informally coaching others, and maybe you're looking to get more classically trained with coaching. Joel, I'm interested. What are one or two things that folks should consider, or like what was a big surprise for you as you went through the certification process?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of what coaching was similar to facilitating, but you're right. There's a very distinct line. Pure coaching, the client has all the answers, and the questions that you ask are intended to bring out that kind of awareness so that the client solves whatever challenge they brought to the discussion. And I will tell you, like, really in my first semester of my program, while I've done a lot of that in my career, having to have a conversation where you only ask questions, not even just questions, but open-ended questions that start with what or how.
Yeah.
And we played kind of an exercise, like have an entire conversation where your participation in that conversation is only asking what and how questions.
Yeah.
It's really, really hard, especially when the client has this issue and you're thinking, God, I know exactly what I would do. I have the perfect answer for you. Yeah. And but the problem with that is that answer may not be what this person needs. Mm-hmm. It may be right for you. It may not be right for them.
Yeah. How do values play a part in your coaching practice? Is it kind of a standard part of your process? Is it something that you use in more of a targeted fashion?
Yeah, more so with career transition. Yeah. When people now, if somebody comes to me and they're like, I already know there's two or three different options I'm looking for. I'm already committed to them. I just need to sort through and figure out which it's going to be. They've already made up their mind. And in terms of serving the client, it's not worth the client's money, and it wouldn't be honest of me to tell the client you really need to go and do all this deep values work. Sure, there could be value in doing so, but someone who's already kind of got it figured out, they just may be looking for validation or testing their logic around the choices that they're considering, versus someone who really is coming from I just don't know, and I don't know where to start. Yeah.
You're about a year and a half into your journey of coaching and solopreneurship. I know that my hot take is that I think the world is in need of really good coaches. My hot take is that as content and training and things of that nature become more and more of a commodity through AI and technology, like human-centered coaching, I think is going to be extremely hot in the next kind of 3 to 5 years. People are going to want to get away from the chat bots, get away from ChatGPT, and they're going to want to be challenged and pushed by other humans. And we as certified coaches and executive coaches, we get to kind of hold and create that space. I also acknowledge that the market is growing. There's a lot of coaches that are out there, which is super exciting. But it is so easy now to kind of start a coaching practice. What are some of the things that you're thinking about in terms of ways that you might differentiate or stand out from the market of a lot of new coaches in the last few years?
Yeah. So anyone coming into the coaching profession, you're going to hear it over and over. The importance of niching, the importance of figuring out who a very, very narrow, very specific group of who makes up your ideal client. So what I'm learning for myself, like while I worked in HR for and still do for years, I can help you write a great resume, but that's not where my passion lies.
Yeah.
For me as a career coach, really working on transition and figuring out what you want to do is really where I'm headed, and taking my business. Another area that really interests me is people who are nearing retirement age. When they are, there's research that shows when people first retire, they get the RV, they go on a big trip, if they still have their health. And then a year and a half later, they're like, now what? Because if they had a career that really, really leveraged their values and they had a real strong professional identity, now they're feeling a big loss, a big emptiness. So I think another area is helping people who are nearing retirement age plan for new careers potentially in their to take into retirement.
Yeah. Oh, that's so fascinating. It's interesting. And I'll give you an example of this idea of niching. That is a very particular segment of the market that I think is ripe for a very particular type of coaching. It's interesting you say that because my interest is actually in the segment that just precedes the folks that are entering retirement. It's maybe executives that are kind of walking into this big decision of, should I stay in this kind of Fortune 100 organization for the last 3 to 5 years of my career, or is there a next? Like, is there like a final chapter for me that really brings in some of my more intrinsic motivation and values that drive me? But I'm maybe a little set in my ways or even scared to take that leap, knowing that, gosh, it's the last kind of 5 to 7 years potentially before retirement. And like, I can either kind of, cash it in, or I can take a little bit of a leap and I can maybe go and do something or start something that really excites me. So that's just a good example of like two very specific niches that you could build an entire coaching practice around. And I think that really is maybe where the market is headed, just as saturated as it's getting. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, for sure.
Joel, I want to first off, thank you for your perspective. We kind of did a little bit of a dance, but we touched on, everything from values being an unlock for those folks who might be, stagnant or potentially burned out. We talked about values as a tool or framework, when to bring it into the discussion or not. We also talked about things to think about and best practices if you're approaching becoming a coach yourself, and some of the big differences between coaching, consulting, and facilitating. So a lot covered in 20 minutes. Thank you.
Great summary.
Wanted to just maybe end with a little bit of a lightning round. We love to do this with all of our guests. And what you and I literally just met, I'm super excited to learn more about you as well too. So I teased this earlier, but I told you don't give me the answer because I'm really excited to learn live. What is what's something, Joel, that you are watching, listening to, or reading today that you're really excited about?
Yeah, so it's not new. I'm late to discover it, but on Max, the last week I've been binge watching this show, The Doghouse UK. So
Interesting.
It takes place at a dog show. I'm a big dog fan.
Yeah.
It takes place at a shelter, and each episode traces like 2 or 3 families. Oftentimes they've been impacted by a death, or the passing of a spouse or a special needs child, and they're looking to rescue a dog. And these dogs, they tell the story of these dogs and where they came from and what they're facing. But ultimately, in most every episode, every family goes away with their new dog, and it's just precious. I just love it.
I love that. What is maybe like a conversation starter, icebreaker, way to open dialogue that you've either used recently or you've heard of that has just been like, oh, that's a wonderful way to like open space, disarm a room, invite people in? Like, how do you typically like to open conversations, whether that's in a coaching call or whether you're meeting somebody for the first time?
Yeah, I don't like. I so follow the vibe of the other person, so I don't know that I have like a signature. But I would say like people like humor, people like in general, honesty, humor, being vulnerable,
Yeah.
sharing how, I mean, right before you and I when you and I first started speaking, I shared straight up with you, like, my God, I don't think I've ever done anything like this before. So, just being honest, when it's appropriate, but I think that can open the door for relatedness.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, last question, and this is one that we ask everybody. Joel, we want you to think of something that you admire about yourself, and we'll have you finish this sentence. If the world were a lot more like Joel, it would be blank.
It would be fun.
Yeah, I can already tell that. I can tell that about you.
Yeah. You know, that's the whole, like this whole thing of building a coaching practice. I mean, it's been a lot of work, tremendous
Yeah.
a lot of work, and at the same time, all of it is fun. I
Yeah.
really am learning so many new things. I'm learning about digital marketing. I'm learning about just the legal aspects of
Yeah.
trademarking, etc.
Yeah.
It's been fascinating. So yeah, fun.
I love that. That's simple, but what an evergreen word. And again, I have a feeling that word reflects you nicely. Joel, we want to thank you for joining today. How can people get to know you better? Where would you send them?
Yeah, you can find me at orangedoorcoaching.com. I'm also on LinkedIn, Orange Door Coaching, both as Joel Dietz, but you could also find my practice, Orange Door Coaching.
Can I ask the story behind Orange Door? Because I love
Yeah.
the name. It's simple and catchy.
Like to me, like I love the color orange, despite the fact that you can't see any in this room. It may be a little much for a room. Uh, the door of my home is painted orange,
Mm.
and to me, a door is like, it's something you're going into. It's something, there's a
Yeah.
possibility behind the door, and orange is such an optimistic kind of fun and
Mm.
quirky and unusual color that you just don't see on that many doors.
I love that.
So
Yeah, it stands out. That's great. Well, Joel, I want to wish you best of luck as you get your practice stood up, and best of luck with Orange Door. We're really excited to have you now officially a part of the Navigating Now community. I'm sure we'll probably have you back on at some point. You did a fascinating job, so thank you. I had a lot of fun, and we just appreciate your leadership and your insights. Thanks for joining.
for sure. Thank you so much.
All right. Okay. Well, that wraps up episode 220 of the Thought Team Navigating Now virtual roundtable series. Man, week over week, we just continue to bring new perspective, and more importantly, just great new humans to the table that all have a little bit of an interesting take on some of these evergreen topics like leadership, learning, and strategy within our organizations. Joel is no exception. So we want to thank all of you for joining. Again, we go live every Thursday at 3 p.m. Central. You can find this episode and all episodes at thoughttium.com/live. And we look forward to seeing you next week. I believe we might have a little bit of a Thoughttium hot take next week. So we'll look forward to that. Until then, thoughttium.com/live. We hope you all